If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
The future's toughest cop is Katie Coltrane.
I'm back.
And now she's getting a new partner.
Dun, 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 dun.
His name is Teddy.
Hit me. It's a dinosaur.
You two solved this case together.
What? What? It's a dinosaur.
New partner, Coltrane?
He's got the style.
I'm here for a new look.
Step right up.
Push the button.
He's a cop.
Mahalo!
You gotta make him look like a real cop.
I'm too sexy for my clothes.
That thing at the table just clacked at me.
He's got horns for you. It's very normal.
He's got the charm.
Hey! Your mind's shut down and your glands have taken over.
And he's got the appetite.
You cannot eat our only suspect.
To come out
Yes!
on top.
Boom! I'm amazing.
New Line Cinema presents
Hey, you think you're gonna get somebody?
Whoopi Goldberg.
Can you just slide your butt? Yeah, that's great.
Like that?
And introducing
Ooh, Dougie!
Teddy.
Sweets. One per customer.
Theodore Rex.
Pig.
It's a tale you'll never forget.
I love when he does that.
Welcome to the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me this week is Mr. Brad Jones.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back.
Also back in the booth for the fourth time this month as we take this unusual journey is Mr. Kevin Lehane.
That's Tyrannosaurus Rex, girly boy. Hi, Mike.
We conclude Whoopruary with a discussion of 1995's buddy cop dinosaur movie Theodore Rex. Written and directed by Jonathan Betuel, the film stars Whoopi as Katie Coltrane, a souped-up super cop reluctantly paired with a press agent who wants to be a cop in the worst way, the titular Theodore Rex, a snappy dresser who happens to be a dinosaur. We will be getting into all the dirty behind-the-scenes drama of this film, the way it was dumped onto video, as well as possibly spoiling the film's twists and turns. Sure, so if you don't want anything ruined, go watch the film or maybe read one of the many novelizations and come back after you've done your homework. We will still be here. So, Brad, when was the first time you saw Theodore Rex and what did you think?
First time I saw it was last week. And when you send out the list towards the end of the year where you're like, here's the list of all the movies that are coming up that which one do you want to pick to be on? One of the movies that you had listed is a Jim Carrey movie, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time. But then I saw Theodore Rex there and was like, when am I ever going to watch Theodore Rex? This is an excuse to finally see this movie. And I have this weird Mandela effect with this film where I thought I remembered for sure that this played in our theaters for like a week, but I guess not. Like the later seeing it was dumped on video and then all the behind the scenes drama with it. You know, I kind of like that genre of pop partnered with a thing that talks, like sort of like Tequila and Bonetti with a dinosaur, and that era of 90s stuff where this is a stupid script, but we're giving it fantastic set design and costuming and puppetry. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take a Tuesday afternoon and watch it. So I watched it last Tuesday. And the biggest surprise was I didn't expect 5 minutes in to be like, I'm lost.
I'm glad you said that.
I don't know how you could be lost, but we'll talk about that. Kevin, how about yourself?
The first time I'd seen this was just this week, and I've watched it twice since, and I think I know less about it now having seen it than I did before I even bothered to look into this film. It's a trip, and I have to tell you, Mike, when it comes to 90s dinosaur films, this is no prehysteria.
Yeah, this was a new one for me as well. I was telling Brad before we started recording, and I think I told you a little bit too, Kevin, as far as this last film. This last film was a tough one because, we talked about Jumpin' Jack Flash, Burglar, Fatal Beauty, all three films I had seen many times growing up and really enjoyed those. And I kept thinking, what's the fourth film going to be? Is it going to be The Telephone, which was the next film in that series? Is it going to be The Associate, which I also really liked? Or is it going to be something completely different? And I was looking at all the movies, and kind of like you, Brad, I had never seen Theodore Rex. And I said, okay, maybe. And then when I saw that Jonathan Betuel had wrote and directed it, I said, okay, well, I know Mr. Betuel. We talked about The Last Starfighter. He's been on the show before. Let me reach out. And as soon as he agreed to an interview, I said, okay, that's the fourth film. So I watched this before I talked with him, and then I watched it again a couple times this week. And yeah, wow. I love that this movie starts off with the old screenwriting trope, and I'm sure you know this very well, Kevin. You tell and you don't show, because we're going to tell everything in an opening scroll. We're going to talk about what's happening tomorrow night. We're going to talk about what just happened.
1 hour ago, 2 workers escaped from the New Eden compound and are racing to tell the police about Kane's master plan.
We're going to give the plans of the bad guy, like that whole Bondian trope where you're like, oh, well, Mr. Bond, now that you're going to die, I'm going to tell you my whole plan.
At midnight tomorrow, billionaire Eleazar Kane will launch his New Eden missile to bring on another ice age. After mankind is extinct, Kane will reanimate the pairs of all Earth's animals he keeps frozen in his ark and create his vision of paradise.
No. Right here in the opening scroll, after mankind is extinct, Kane will reanimate the pairs of all the Earth's animals he keeps frozen in his ark and create his vision of paradise. 1 hour ago, 2 workers escaped from the New Eden compound and are racing to tell the police about Kane's master plan. And we start off, and there we go. We even have more in that scroll, and it's just fucking crazy. I've never seen a movie start this way. And it's amazing to me that this was written, the first draft, or one of the first drafts, was written in 1992. The movie comes out in, I think it's 95, but isn't it technically 96 when it gets put into video stores? Or is it 94 and then 95 it gets put into video stores? But it's post Last Action Hero. And Last Action Hero had very few jokes that I enjoyed, but the one I did enjoy was, here's your new partner, a cartoon cat.
Radcliffe, you're pulling duty with the animated cat.
Hiya, Toots. I'm getting a flea bath later. Join me?
You touch me again, furball, and I'll kill you.
I can prove this is a movie. Look out there, this is a cartoon cat.
He's supposed to be back on duty. He was only suspended for a month. Now shut up.
And that kind of put the nail in the coffin for me of like all those pairings that you're talking about. I mean, every time there was a popular person, they said, oh, let's pair him with a dog in a movie. We'll have Canine and Turner and Hooch. And what was the one? The Chuck Norris movie, Top Dog? Yeah. So it's like, we're going to have that. We're going to like pair up people with weird things around here.
Alien Nation.
Alien Nation. Oh, there's so much Alien Nation to me in this. And Alien Nation was just so much better than this. Or like that weird combination of a Hollywood actor and the hard-nosed cop with that.
I love that. The hard way.
Yeah, it's great. But this dinosaur cop mix-up, holy cow. And I think it could have maybe worked, but not in this form. Not in this form.
Not like this.
I was writing down, like, what could have made this work? And a couple of things. One, the voice. I like George Newbern. And it was kind of funny that he was in this because he was Puchinsky's partner. And so...
a classic.
Peter Boyle is a tough, ill-mannered cop who is run down in the line of duty. But that's not the end of his story. No. He's reincarnated. Surprise! As a streetwise bulldog in Puchinsky.
What are you going to do now?
Well, first I'm going to try licking myself, and then I'm going to catch my killer.
The talking dog teams up with his astonished former partner to put the bite on crime.
Yeah, this time he's the voice of the thing. But his voice paired with how Theodore looks in it feels more like he's playing like a sassy college student than a cop. And the way that they write, I'm like, this could make sense. I could go along with this if you had a Samuel Jackson voicing this or something like that. Or if it was even believable that he's a cop, because it seems so inconvenient for him to be a cop. He walks so slow, is always knocking over things with his tail. He has to drive this ice cream truck that probably goes 10 miles an hour. He doesn't carry a gun. And even when a bomb is about to go off, he can't run away from it. They have to inch away from it.
I'm going to stand up a little bit for the premise of this because I could see this working if it was an animated film, if it was treated in a more exaggerated way. But it's unfortunate that the execution of it is so distracting. And as I said to you guys before we started recording, I was forgetting what was going on in the film as I was watching it because I was just so completely dumbfounded by the awkward staging and execution of the story. It's so odd of a film. But yeah, in terms of the writing, that's another thing where not only do they have the plot explained to you before the story begins, which, why would you do that? It's like the Netflix model of explaining to you what's about to happen so you don't have to watch the screen. But they also narrated it as well. So if you're not even reading it, you're being explained it twice. But yeah, classic screenwriting structure, payoff, and then setup.
And also they condense so much of the plot into fairly awkward exposition scenes, like you said, so that the rest of it can be padded out with a lot of farting, a lot of belching, a lot of dancing. And then Stephen McCaddy comes in like I've switched over to Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Literally wearing the colors that the Joker wears. At one point, he's wearing a purple cloak and a green shirt. And I'm just like, okay, yeah. And that crazy wig he's got on, which is wild. The opening is black and white, slow motion, super stylized. And he's got that long hair and he's carrying a gun behind his back, which doesn't make any sense while he's running through this forest. It's the old graveyard for an amusement park, which really, other than seeing the one like statue, and I'm like, is this a miniature golf course? It takes a while before they actually explain where he's at. And apparently all these dinosaurs are connected, but it doesn't really make sense because he wakes up, like Theodore Rex, the introduction to him is him like, having that moment when he wakes up.
I thought it was a dream sequence. I thought he woke up from a dream.
Well, especially because the dinosaurs all kind of look alike, not to sound dinosaurist or anything, but yeah, he looks exactly like Oliver Rex. So yeah, and they all have the same last name too, if you know what I mean. Very close family.
So that's how it is in their family.
You did not learn the lesson from this movie. It's very anti-dinosaur there.
So yeah, he wakes up, but then he calls the police station and they're like, oh yeah, we had this dinocide reported. So they've already known about it for a while. So I'm like, oh, so he didn't wake up from the guy dying. He just woke up later, I guess. But that happens a few times in this movie where you're like, the timeline just doesn't work at all. And I know that's very small potatoes compared to the overall thing that's happening in this movie.
But you know what's tragic about that is if you read the first page of the script, it's so evocative and exciting. And I was in and I thought, wow, this is such a departure from what they actually end up making. Everything about this film was just so random where I was constantly being blindsided by latest sort of developments where I thought, hang on a second, have I just not been paying attention enough? It's like all of a sudden the dinosaurs are telepathic. but then also you've got bionic cops, and then you have insects, which are like sentient as well, and there's just so many hats on hats on hats added into the story. It's bonkers. It feels like they were just making it up as they were going, but when you read the script, it's all in there.
What I mean by you can't look away from the film, it's not that it's riveting, it's that if you look away for a second, you might miss a really important piece of plot. You mentioned the whole bionic cop thing. I must have looked away for 5 seconds and missed a setup of that. So later when a character is shot and you see all these Electra things going around, I'm like, it's not that I felt lost necessarily. I figured in my head, like, I just looked at my phone for like 5 seconds and missed this important thing about this character.
No, the first mention of it, I think, is when she goes to the autopsy of one of the guys who was killed, one of the gang members who was killed. And he says to her, "You've had a new upgrade. You're not as angry as you used to be," or something like that. And that was the only setup I could track. Where I got to the end and I thought, hang on, she's a Terminator? But yeah, do you know, the other thing that jumped out at me, it was like I was watching this and it suddenly dawned on me, I thought, this is Blade Runner. They've just remade Blade Runner.
I can see that.
Yeah, I guess I could see that too.
Because it's a dinosaur meeting his maker and he's going up against him and there's racist undertones to it and stuff. But yeah, it's...
in the universe of the Super Mario Brothers movie, at least that movie, when it's set up with the narration, it was simple enough I could go along with it. That movie, you know, for lack of a better term, did the setup right. Like, where the gun narrator just came in and was like, yeah, look, a meteor landed on the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs. But what if they just went to a parallel universe? Boom, there's your movie.
I kept thinking of iRobot through this whole thing, especially the scientist creator guy, but I don't remember if Cochrane. Sorry, I don't.
Coltrane?
Why am I like? No, the guy who played the main scientist. I don't know what. Sorry, yeah, I was calling him Cochrane as in Zephram Cochrane. Sorry, I don't know why. I don't remember if Cromwell is. I think he's not evil. He just gets ganked, and there's other evil stuff going on. But it's like, oh, these robots are going to turn evil. I kept waiting for Armin Mueller-Stahl, grandfatherly, wonderful Armin Mueller-Stahl, to do something where it was like all these dinosaurs are going to turn on the humans. But don't worry, there are barely any dinosaurs. I think we see like maybe a dozen, and we just keep seeing the same dinosaurs over and over and over again. They show up at parties. They show up at funerals. They show up celebrations at the end. Gay bars, yeah. Oh boy.
The cantina.
The gay dinosaur thing was really getting me. I was like, wow, that might be a bridge too far in 1995. I'm not sure.
I was wondering what the Jim Henson Company thought of this film, because I thought for the longest time that it was the same crowd that worked on dinosaurs that did this, because the intellectual property, the creation of these things are almost identical to that TV show. It was like, did they just use the same puppets? But no, it's a totally different special effects company that made this.
Honey, I'm home.
Yeah, I thought 100% that they were the same dinosaurs because they look so freaking similar. I was like, oh, well, they just took all the dinosaurs from the TV show. They were in mothballs and they broke them out and they said, okay, well, here's this new thing. And I don't know the timeline when Dinosaurs, the TV show, was.
It was a couple of years before this when it ended, I think.
So, and I remember that one had like a crazy ending, right? Like they actually get wiped out by the meteor. Yeah. Oof.
But what if they all became cops in Brooklyn?
And you're right, as far as the ever changing narrative and just the introduction of all these different characters. There's the woman that's with Teddy at the crime scene. And then there's a different woman who I think is wearing a similar headset when she's, oh God, the outfit scene, the outfit montage with the, oh boy.
Wait, is this Molly
rough.
When she does a sexily undressing scene and he's like unable to contain himself?
No, I was talking about, which is a good scene. I was talking about the scene where they say you need to look like a cop. So they put him in that machine that makes him look like a mariachi singer.
Okay, Ella, dress me up. Now make me look nice, okay? I've got this very picky partner. Besides being loud, obnoxious, and very pushy, she's a joy to work with.
What's up, look?
Kill all the rabbits. Ella, this is not undercover. Push the button. Ella, undercover, por favor, please. Oh, kala shaka undercover now. Mahalo.
He's a cop. You gotta make him look like a real cop. Ella.
I'm getting a wee bit of breeze in my lowlands, lassie. Work with me, will ya?
All right. I think this will do fine.
And then puts him in an outfit which, for the life of me, looks exactly the same as the outfit he was wearing. I really didn't see a difference.
He just had better jogging shoes. So he could tiptoe a little faster when he moves away from an explosion.
Those big 3-toed Converse he was wearing. And yeah, Kevin, this would work so much better than as a cartoon, especially because Bud Cort is playing a cartoon character.
He is. He feels like a character from like James Bond Jr. or something, or the Captain Planet cartoon. It's really exaggerated and what have you. But there were so many ancillary characters that kept being introduced where I thought something's going to happen with them, like her partner at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, I thought for sure he was going to die. I was like, oh, yeah, this guy's dead meat. No, he just goes away.
Which would have been an improvement. It would have motivated her character a bit more. There are moments in the script where it just feels like, did they not bother to write it, or did they not just want to shoot it? But when she gets teamed up with him the first time, she says 5 times, he's a dinosaur. He's a dinosaur. He's a dinosaur. I'm like...
Teddy Rex, meet Katie Coltrane.
Hi.
You two solved this case together.
Whoa, what?
Teddy's in public relations, but I'm field promoting him temporarily.
He's a dinosaur.
Come on, Coltrane. He graduated from the academy just like you did.
He's a dinosaur.
You're not a speciesist, are you?
Get me results by prime time tomorrow, and I'll double your regular commissions.
It's a dinosaur. Come on.
Hey, Coltrane, straighten up and fly right. This is your chance for a comeback. Don't blow it.
He's a dinosaur.
Look, as long as we're partners, why don't we make the best of it, huh?
You're a dinosaur.
Yes, technically.
Like, you could write something else here to express why she doesn't want to work with him. She just keeps saying, he's a dinosaur, he's a dinosaur, he's a dinosaur. It's like, at least try a little bit.
I liked moments like that because she is on such not give a crap mode in this.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
not to the point to where she's overacting, quite the opposite. The kind of not give a crap where you are just getting the lines out and that's it. Like, sure, later it talks about her being like this bionic cop or whatever, but that's not why she's monotone in this movie. It's because she wants to be anywhere else but this film. So when there were parts like the one you said where she's like, he's a dinosaur, those parts I could get kind of an ironic laugh out of, because there were moments like that that just felt like Whoopi Goldberg piecing into her head exactly what she's in. Like, also that another part I was thinking of with that was when they were in the Star Wars cantina, but for dinosaurs, where she just cracks and just starts laughing.
That was the one laugh I got, where the big grill dinosaur is like smiling at her and she's like, you're not getting any tonight. It's an awful lot of people walking into cavernous sets and just standing there, stock still, and exchanging dialogue and then cutting to the next scene. Ooh, yeah, they're just walking from set to set. Really low energy, really disinterested, and I couldn't follow along what was going on or why it was happening. I was looking in the background thinking, oh my God, that's a nice lighting setup there in the background, and not paying attention.
The sets are gorgeous. I really like these. I mean, that kind of open air bar where the little kid is working, it's like neon is everywhere, and he's got that little thing. And I guess you're right. This is kind of like the Blade Runner thing. Yeah. Bullfish. That's what my ex-wife used to call me. Like, yeah. And he's got even like the whole thing of they're showing like, oh, Kane is going to bring back raccoons next. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess all of these animals, this is how we find out all these animals are extinct. Like, bringing those back are just as well as, like, Tyrell making a robot version of, or a replicant version of a raccoon, I suppose.
Do you like our owl?
It's artificial.
Of course it is.
Must be expensive.
Very.
It's Blade Runner if Mom accidentally rented Pluto Nash.
We have Blade Runner at home.
This was reminding me of stuff like that, where it is that era. That's a funny era where it was like Pluto Nash or Super Mario Brothers, where there was a lot spent on making the sets look good, making the lighting look good, making the costuming be fairly impressive. For a movie where it's like, we need to pad this out, let's have him fart on somebody's face for a while he's strapped down. Like, they're simultaneously also a weird fetish film.
There's two things that boys love playing as a kid: cops and robbers and dinosaurs. You team them up, it's like, that's a no-brainer. But then you introduce a dinosaur that doesn't eat anybody. He's not even a meat eater.
It's a Vegisaurus, Lex, Vegisaurus.
And all he does is keep knocking people over with his tail. It's like, you're not even doing the cool thing with a dinosaur. You've got a T-Rex in this. Let him maul somebody, or at least be intense in some of these action scenes. But no, he's like a clone that's just bobbling about the place. Barney the dinosaur is more intimidating.
It's so strange that this world has dinosaurs, but they don't seem to change anything. It's just our world with brighter colors.
Same with the robots.
Yeah, and I guess they call the robots guns because they say at one point the guns got us, and that was in the script. The script, I have to say, way better. Not great, but way better, and really has this whole thing of like, okay, we have these special cops, and I really like there's a twist at the end with these very specialized cops that are kind of bio-enhanced, and they've got, you know, like they can download things. It's very Matrix, you know, like at one point she even says like download vehicles or download this, and she's gaining all the knowledge. You know, it's kind of like Trinity when she's like, oh, can I learn how to, you know, fly this helicopter? There's a part in the script towards the end where they finally reveal why Coltrane, who's a white male in the script, and we'll talk about the differences with, you know, gosh, we've talked about this so much, Kevin, this whole idea of it was written for this type of person, but Whoopi Goldberg ended up playing it. But the cop basically died. The company came in. It's very RoboCop. The company came in, replaced all of his parts with these robot parts, and he has to work for them and always work for them, had to give up his entire family. So, like, his family's aware that he's alive and his family is around, but he cannot have anything to do with them. Otherwise, the company will repossess the parts and basically leave him to die. So I'm like, oh, wow, that's really fucking dark. And that's the whole thing about that script, is it's so much darker and so much more adult. And somewhere in there, even though it's about a cop and a dinosaur, but somewhere in there, they lost all of that, and it became this living cartoon that we see.
Yeah, in the actual movie, it feels like she's a bionic cop only so she can survive getting shot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or not change costumes. She wears the same clothes for the entire film.
Again, though, in the script, the plot is so, like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to create this new ice age? Like, we never really get, like, why he wants to do this. Like, there's more motivation for Vera Farmiga's character in that horrible Godzilla King of the Monsters movie where she wants to, like, raise up all the titans, all the kaiju again. That makes no sense, but this makes even less sense.
New Eden, by bringing about another ice age.
Humans have been the dominant species for thousands of years, and look what's happened. Overpopulation, pollution, war. The mass extinction we feared has already begun, and we are the cause. We are the infection.
I can kind of see, you know, where they're coming from, where it's like the future of humanity with synthetic life or androids, and the past with dinosaurs, and us coalescing in the middle. But it's too many ideas for one film, especially a kids' film, to handle. Sometimes you can blame development for that stuff, but I feel like they started off on the wrong foot here, and they needed to pare it back a little bit. It needed to be about just one thing, which is dinosaurs and cops working together.
have it have that dark edge like you were talking about. Because going back to something like Tequila and Bonetti for a second, not that that's the most perfect show ever made, but one, it seems like Theodore's apartment is Bonetti's apartment from that show. Like, I had to look. I'm like, they look exactly the same. I was wondering if it was even the same set. But that show, you had, like, it was a cop, Jack Scalia, and he's partnered with a dog that talks, but the other people can't hear him talk. You're just kind of hearing his thoughts in his head. But that, you had Jack Scalia playing that role as if he's on Hill Street Blues, as if this is a serious, gritty cop show. And even the cases on the show were seriously dark. Like, you would have an episode about like a serial rapist. You'd have one where there's just a naked body hanging from the ceiling, and then it pans down and Tequila sees it and is just like, oh boy. Like, at least that you can get one, you have the mixture of the other actors are treating it pretty dark and serious, but the tonal inconsistencies of it also like make it pretty entertaining, even if that's maybe not the intent for it to be that, but still it makes it a fascinating watch. Whereas here, you mostly have a lot of them acting like they are in a wacky comedy, either that or, again, Whoopi Goldberg wanting to be anywhere else in this. She's not acting like she's in a really dark movie where she happens to be partnered with a dinosaur. So it was just a struggle to sit through because the world made less sense
the more you watched it.
You couldn't really even get a lot of unintentional laughs out of it. A mixture of the lead performances not really bringing it or being miscast. And again, just scratching my head, which I didn't think would happen in Theodore Rex.
I had to look up what you were talking about there. Tequila and Bonetti, that did not travel.
I wasn't aware of that show either, so I was glad you explained what it was, because I'm like, what is he talking about?
Oh, you guys would love it. Oh, early 90s, like very, very post-Turner and Hooch. Belisario, the creator of Quantum Leap. Basically, the network were like, we want our own Turner and Hooch, so he did this. It only lasted half a season. That was the kind of thing where its flaws made it a very, very entertaining set, and it even had some dramatic stuff that like would work every now and then. Whereas this, whatever your feeling of it is 5 minutes in, is going to be your feeling through the entire thing.
I was struggling even to find quotes, any one-liners to use at the beginning of this episode. There was only a couple of lines which I thought, oh, that's kind of funny, where Bert Court, the Highlander guy, says to him, you get a shot at redemption. And he says, again? Like, another shot at redemption? I thought, that's kind of amusing. And the other one was when Teddy Rex goes, I better call my mom. I don't have a mom. I thought, what? This is so strange. Like, the implications of that, like, why would he even think to say that? He doesn't have a mother. Tragic. So sad.
I wrote down a line that made me laugh, and it was when a character said, I ain't cleaning this up. And here's the thing about this movie. I wrote that down because it was a line that made me laugh. But even that is forgettable because I'm looking at this going, I wish I wrote down the context of this line, but I know that line made me laugh. But it just, like everything else, went in one ear and out the other.
They didn't have the clone character because as I read in that opening scroll, 2 people escaped New Eden and were coming to warn the police. And it took me forever to figure out who the other one was. It was Oliver Rex, and it was this Adam guy who's a clone. And it's kind of like Jurassic World or wherever they like introduce like, oh yeah, and we can clone humans too. It's like, what? Oh, that's a surprise. Well, that opens up a whole new can of worms as far as the implications of this stuff. So, all right, like the little clone girl in the last movie, I don't think they really knew what the hell to do with her. And I don't think it made any sense to make her a clone in the first place. But in this, it's like, oh, so he can clone humans. All right. Well, that seems very interesting. And there is kind of a mention of that in the screenplay, which doesn't translate to this movie, which is all of those guys with the crazy masks that are just like giggling and running around, all the Bud Courts.
The Jawas.
Yeah, the Jawas, yeah, which are called Zap Heads, I think. those are all clones, apparently, in the script, but that doesn't translate to here at all because they never take off their masks.
I had to Google that, and to give you an idea of the footprint of this film, there was no information online that could help me figure out what I was not getting from the film. So it just said Zapids were a gang. I was like, oh, okay, because they looked like robots to me or some sort of like cybernetic being. But yeah, so they're just clones, just people clones.
Well, with the name, you would think that they are on some sort of drug or that they power themselves on energy or something like that. And yeah, they've got the masks that they wear and everything. But yeah, it never
cool
comes
looking
across that they're clones at all. Yeah, they're very cool, but I wonder how much of this movie was made in ADR because they could have been menacing, except that they're just like all the time. There's so many lines that they just add in where I'm like, oh, wow. Or sound effects like crazy. I mean, of course, we talked about the farting already, but the bad breath is also there. But there are so many weird little things where it's just like boing for like no reason. We'll hear a boing noise.
That's the going bananas motto of like, this joke might not land, but we put a spring sound in there. That's we're going to get some asses in seats or on the couch. We're putting this direct to video.
We need a machine that shoots macadamia cookies at this guy's mouth. Let's do it.
He sort of wanted to make his apartment like Pee-wee's from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, but just spent all of his budget on the cookie machine and stopped there.
When she finds a dog on the street, which I guess is supposed to show us that she has humanity and brings it to the little guy, the little kid, the dog looks exactly the same as Theodore Rex's dog in my mind anyway. I'm like, you couldn't find a different type of dog because these two things look the same to me.
Yeah, I wrote down save the dog rather than save the cat a moment to show that she's likable, I guess, but she's really not likable. You know, Whoopi Goldberg, her superpower is that she's so charming and charismatic. And in this, she's just sullen and nasty, and she doesn't really redeem herself. It's a really sluggish performance.
The scene when she and Juliet Landau are going back and forth, and she's like, oh, yes, and starts doing the voice. I'm like, I'm very uncomfortable right now.
We're here to see Kane.
And you are?
Coltrane, grid police.
And you are? Dr. Shade, Kane's personal physician. Follow.
Come, Teddy. Follow.
Follow.
Nothing's motivating it. It's just sort of like being dismissive and rude. But yeah, I was hoping that I would find it funny to see somebody struggle through this film and try and give it their all, and it would be unintentionally funny. But it was just kind of like a chore, a real chore.
Some actors can do that in a movie and they go so over the top that they make something of it. Like, you know, if this movie had a Nick Cage in it or something like that, where like he might be in something where he knows what it is. He doesn't necessarily want to be there, but we'll use that to go pretty over the top and still make something entertaining out of it. Or going back to Highlander 2, Sean Connery in that film, where he's almost winking at the camera that he knows exactly the kind of movie he's in. Then there's other actors that don't really do that. It's kind of just, they're boring in it. If they're sleepwalking through it.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah. Or Eddie in Pluto Nash, where they're really just kind of on autopilot, the bad form of autopilot. Where it is, I'm not going to emote. I'm not going to make this character anything more than it is on the page. I'm here. You got me from 9 to 5 and I'm going home.
You mentioned there at the beginning, Brad, that the voice acting wasn't landing for you. And I have to say, I thought that all the voice acting was pretty unpleasant. And Carol Kane, for me, is one of the most enjoyable actresses. And even her character of Molly Rex, I was like, this is awful. This is really rotten. And to see Molly and Teddy flirting with each other, it was so uncomfortable. It just did not work.
Well, especially that her husband just died. And in the script, they go very far to say, listen, we hadn't been together in forever. There was no love going on there. There was a whole thing of like, Oliver really bought into the company line and she didn't. There was tension between them. None of that is here. Instead, you're just like, who is this floozy who's suddenly just going after Teddy big time, basically on the night of her husband's funeral? And I'm like, well, she's a femme fatale then. You know, she's a torch singer at a bar. She has to be some sort of femme fatale who's going to turn on him and trying to manipulate him in some way. No, instead, she's just like that little kid. They're kidnap bait. And that's all they are, is kidnap bait. And I'm like, really? That's what we're doing here? Like, now we have to kidnap the little kid for Whoopi's character, Coltrane, to be involved in. And now we have to kidnap Molly for Teddy's character to be involved in. And same thing with, I think, the Adam character was like, oh, well, Teddy's going to be interested in this dinocide, the first dinocide. And it really makes me wonder what the hell's going on in this world, that this is the first dinocide. And then Whoopi is going after the human clone. So I'm like, okay, we have these parallel stories. When are they going to collide? Well, they collide really darn quick. Same thing with our bad guys. Within the first few minutes, we're like, oh, McHattie knows Bud Court. They know this guy at the big museum thing. And then he knows Armin Mueller-Stahl. So they're all in on it. And you know that by 18 minutes into this film, there's no third act reveal of, oh, Armin Mueller-Stahl is behind this whole thing. Yeah, we know that. And we've known that in the fucking crawl, yes.
I told you in the opening crawl. You know what they should have done? They should have kidnapped the dogs. And then you have these two evolved people trying to save these lower life forms. It would have been a little bit more, I guess, thematic. But yeah, it was just going through the motion. Everything felt like it was just plodding through plot. I was reading up on some of the reactions that the producers had when they were seeing cuts of the film. And one of the guys, Stefano, one of the producers, exec producer, went to see Dragonheart, the Sean Connery film. And he walked out of it and said to the director, we are so fucked. Because that was obviously breaking ground with CG. And they had these, I don't know what you'd call them, Muppets, to try and win the hearts of kids across America. But yeah, ugly scenes behind the scenes.
Should have taken him to the premiere of Prehysteria instead.
Coming this summer.
Attention, please.
The world premiere.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Of an action-filled family adventure.
Behold! I give you prehistoric life!
It's a story of two kids. One huge discovery.
It must have been frozen in those eggs for ages.
And a lovable bunch of prehistoric pets.
The biggest terrestrial carnivore that ever lived.
Guess we got the runs of the litter.
You were mentioning things that actually made you laugh. There's one thing that made me laugh pretty well, which was when they're talking about, oh, Teddy, we've got your new partner here. And they're out in front of the museum. And this guy, for whatever reason, he reminds me of William Zabka, but like an older William Zabka, like now's, well, not now it's William Zabka, but anyway, this guy walks up and he's got two bandoliers across his chest of shotgun shells. He's carrying a gun across his shoulder, just this big muscly guy. And he's got a black headband and stuff. And you're just like, oh, wow. Okay. This is his partner. And then Whoopi kind of comes up and pushes him out of the way. And I was like, oh, well, that was kind of funny. But again, they called her and said, come over to the museum well before they just made the agreement that he's going to be her partner. So I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, get your fucking timeline straight.
That joke doesn't work. It doesn't work. That only works if you haven't introduced Whoopi yet. But it's like, we even know her name. So it's like Coltrane. I was like, who's going to fall for that sight gag?
I'm with you. I actually did get a little bit of a chuckle out of that, but you're right, because it was still sort of awkward in that, like, this joke, sure, I chuckled a little bit, but yeah, it could have done better, because then it could have been done better, because then it does raise the question of, well, who was that guy? Where did he really come from?
Where'd he come from and where'd he go? And could I follow him instead for a little bit?
Yeah, it is party. Like, well, why isn't he her partner?
And what happened to her partner?
You mentioned novelizations, like plural. Were there a lot, and were they more accurate to what the script was?
Well, I didn't look through everything, but there were 3 novelizations that were done, and they were done for different age groups. I mean, they were really going to town with this. So they had one which was basically a storybook with pictures and a little bit of text, like maybe a paragraph at the bottom. That was maybe like 24 pages. Then you got the more intermediate one where it's like, Eddie flashed awake. I was reading the first pages of all these to make sure that they were different. And that one starts with him waking up. And then the next one is the older one. And that's like 124 pages. And that one starts with the murder, but it's played down. So, I mean, really, we keep talking about how this is a kid's film, but I don't think it was supposed to be a kid's film. I think it just kind of turned into a kid's film because it's pretty adult in different parts of it.
I want to compliment the writer as well, though, because the script is really well written. If I was reading that, I'm like, this is evocative, and this is somebody who's got a grasp on what they're doing. It's not inept or clunky or poorly put across. And I did really like The Last Starfighter as well. He's got chops. It's just that for whatever reason, and it seems like it was an absolute mindfuck of a production, that he wasn't set up to succeed, and directing his own material didn't really help him. He's a good writer. It's just, I wouldn't class him as a good director based on this film.
Well, I wonder how many sacrifices he had to make. Like, how many times did he die and have to come back and try to make this into something? Because, it's really rough. And I agree. I like that script. And I really wish that we had that script as the film that we saw, because this film is not good.
Joe Dante would have had a field day with this.
Oh, yeah.
Use the same, was it Rob Bottin that did the special effects for Explorers? Was that the one? Where it's like, those creatures were amazing.
In this one, it did always feel like it had the tone of a kid's movie, the final product of it. Like, to me, it never felt like I was sitting there going, this is a kid's movie? Because even when there is like a murder or something like that in it, it's always acted like it's a kid's movie. It never really feels like it switched tones that dark. Like, even when a guy is being tortured for information, I mean, Theodore is just breathing nasty breath on him and belching in his face and stuff like that. Whereas I might have gotten some like unintentional laughs if suddenly it was like a dark thriller. Or again, if it was like the script and that was the tone of the whole thing, then that would make it far more fascinating.
Another genuine compliment I'm going to pay the film is I thought the score was really well done. And it's Robert Folk who did Ace Ventura before this. So it's not a shoddy, sound-alike kind of orchestration. It was actually, it started off and I thought, they've put some heft behind this. This is a real composer at work here. That was good. Unfortunately, he just didn't have the material to support the music, but I like the work there. I like the music. Well done, Theodore Rex.
Did it ever have trailers play in movie theaters? Because like I said at the beginning, I swear I saw a trailer for this in the theater.
That's a really good question. I imagine that they did at some point, because I think the dumping it on video was really a last minute decision. It was last minute, but then it took a few months. That's why I was talking about was it 95 to 96 or 94 to 95? Because I think the film was done and ready to be released as a Christmas release. And then it got delayed and dumped on video in February of the next year. And it was such a scandal that this big budget movie was getting dumped on video, and that just wasn't done at the time. But
no, that's just Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now people are just like, okay, whatever. Oh, you're not going to show that theatrically? Okay, whatever.
Did it make its money back?
I don't think it did.
Yeah.
How could it?
Take a look here. Yeah, I mean, because it was $33.5 million to make this thing.
Did this even end up on DVD?
Yeah, I want to say yes.
How many copies do you have?
For all of the reasons provided in my answer, which is incorporated herein, in its entirety, I decline to answer the question.
The whole thing's available for free on YouTube. And when you finish it, it does say, if you liked this, check out Prehysteria.
Was Prehysteria, was that the same little shitty kid from Last Action Hero in there?
Yeah, Austin O'Brien.
Okay,
yeah.
that's why I never watched it, because he was on the cover, and I was just like, fuck that kid. I fucking hate Last
We're
Action
not
Hero.
there on opening weekend of My Girl 2.
I was not, no. Does he die from bees in that as well? Does she keep just going out with
He's a
little kids
beekeeper.
that have... Oh, wow. Tell Macaulay I did this.
I wanted to know it was me.
You guys are actually making me want to see this movie now. I also wasn't there on opening weekend for My Girl 2.
There's that weird thing where it sounds like he's going to spit a loogie, and he's just like over the dead dinosaur and making all these horrific noises, and then he finally just reaches into the nostril and brings out the little piece of butterfly that's there. These butterfly bombs are kind of wild. And that whole scene of them going to, what do they call him? The toy maker. His name is like the Silver Samurai in the script, but the toy maker, and that scene with the Kyoto brothers doing puppetry and voices. Holy shit, does that go on forever?
That was so strange. It shifted into Puppet Master, and I was like, what is going on now? This is bizarre. This felt like they were probably viewing dailies and thinking, we've got to yuck it up here. This is just not fun enough. And you could just tell Whoopi just didn't give a shit. She's sitting there looking at a medical kit bag and talking to a puppet, and it's like, what? A hat on a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat. It was just...
And she got a raise for it.
Yeah, didn't they pay her extra in order to convince her to do it? So, the thing about this film is that the lore behind the making of it is genuinely far more interesting than the film itself. That if you come to the film wanting to see what they made in result of like all that tortured negotiations and stuff, it's such a letdown. You're better off just reading up about the film and looking into the behind the scenes documentaries. The film is just so, fortunately, dull, like really dull.
My wife said that too. When when my wife got home from work that day, I was like, "Oh, I had to watch Theodore Rex earlier," and her reaction was just, "Ew." And then she mentioned that she and her sister, they also like watching bad movies like this all the time. Like I was with them once where we were all watching Gooby together, that kind of bad movie. So when she mentioned her and her sister tried watching this, I was like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. But she said they only made it like 15 or 20 minutes in because they just weren't even getting any genuine or unintentional laughs out of it. They were just kind of bored. And I said to her, it's one of those bad movies where your opinion of it either way is not going to change beyond 10 minutes of the movie. Whatever you think of this movie at first, it's going to be that through the rest of it.
And the opening 10 minutes are the best 10 minutes of the whole film, I think. Explosions and kind of Demolition Man vibes on a budget. And then it's like the more that you're told what's going on, the less you care.
This movie had such an opportunity to go to this extinct species club and have like a dance number or something. Like I was like, where is Walk the Dinosaur? Where is Was Not Was in this movie and us doing a whole thing of Walk the Dinosaur? Come on. Yeah, there's an opportunity right there and nobody took it.
Thank God.
That's why Super Mario Brothers was the better movie. Because they played it on the soundtrack of that.
Exactly, which didn't make a lot of sense there. Because there was really only Yoshi in that one.
Super Mario Brothers, though, is a film where you can get a lot of enjoyment out of it because it's so extravagant and some of the effects in that are great. But this is just, it's a Saturday morning kids film done for Canadian TV.
Yeah, the fart jokes. There's the scene where he starts impersonating Jack Nicholson and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm just like, where is this coming from? This is very odd. All of the little things where they're, because you were talking about alienation, and the thing that I like about that is like, this is a really thought out world. And they really talk about like, all right, look at, the magazine covers at the newsstand have, the visitors there, and like everything is kind of tailored and you see how they live in a ghetto and stuff. And it's just like, you don't really get that. Like I said, you see dinosaurs in certain spaces where they're like, okay, here's the funeral, here's the ceremony, here's the bar. But otherwise, you don't really see them walking around, and it's not like, oh, there's two, like when they go to that little kid's restaurant and he's just like, oh, you got to come over tomorrow and my dad's going to be there and blah, blah, blah. but you don't see dinosaurs walking around on the street. It's just all extras just walking around. And then the crazy thing, and I don't get this whatsoever. The crazy thing is like this little kid is like, hey, Whoopi Goldberg, my mom apparently is gone. But so here's I want to introduce you to my dad. You really need to get out more. I think it'd be really great if you dated my dad. And then at the very end of the movie, at the ceremony, his dad is there and the kid goes, "That's my dad." But the audio goes,
Teddy, I'm so proud of you.
and it's not that kid's voice whatsoever. But you see his mouthing. Oh, God.
I'm so proud of you, sweetie.
They also make a really hard pivot just before the finale where they try to tack on this anti-gun message where she tells him, up until this, he's just been knocking things over with his tail. But now she's convincing him, use your mind to stop these guys getting away in a Jeep.
Give me your gun.
I can't.
What?
I can't.
Katie, give me your gun. This is no time to play
Teddy,
around.
listen.
Give me it.
You might have been right. It kills me to say this. You might have been right. Use something a little better than a gun.
No, Katie, look. All this time you've been telling me a good cop uses a gun, right? So what are you telling me now?
I was wrong. Your brain. Use your brain.
All right. Brains over bullets.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Hey, partner?
Wait a minute. You said the P word.
Yeah, I did. Good luck, okay?
Yeah. You too, partner.
Oh, yeah, because that worked so well in Side Hackers. It's like, no, dude, you need a gun. You can't run. You can't drive. You're always knocking over shit.
Whoopi, he's trying to stop the apocalypse. Let him shoot the guys, for fuck's sake.
Well, yeah, but this is a kid's movie, like you were saying, so we can't show that. We can show Stephen McHattie crashing his car and exploding through,
into
I guess, the
cardboard.
the most explosive billboard ever. And then here's Armin Mueller-Stahl strung up and in this Jeep seat. And then we just fade to the next scene. Like, I had to rewind it 3 times last night. I was like, wait a second, what just happened? Did I look down again? Like, what happened to Armin Mueller-Stahl? We never see. We just never find that out.
He got a call from his agent. He's in Shine.
I'm about to win the Oscar. Please leave me alone.
I get the vibe as well. It was like that, not because they were cutting it to ribbons in the editing, but that they just didn't get the footage. That's the vibe I get. It was all masters, pretty much. It was just everyone walking into wide shot and standing there and exposing exposition. And I'm like, okay. This is just get what you can and move on. I loved it.
Yeah, I could tell that you love this movie. I could really tell that this is probably one for the ages for you.
Yeah, like, you didn't watch this movie twice because you had to.
I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, I didn't expect to be empathizing and sympathizing with Whoopi Goldberg, where she got into this mess because she said yes, and then felt the need to sue the producers to get out of it. I thought, yeah, I got into this mess of watching this film by saying yes to Mike, and if I had the resources, I would sue him, but I can't. So
I don't even have an answering machine message to play back as proof.
From the moment I hit play, it was the longest 3.5 hours of my life.
And you're right. I think a behind the scenes of this would be wonderful to watch. I mean, if those people that made that, the making of the Godfather thing, if they want to start tackling Theodore Rex, I would definitely approve.
But she doesn't even speak about it, does she? She won't even mention the film by name.
I've seen her mention it. Because that was one thing I looked up afterwards. She doesn't mention it often, but there is an episode of The View where the subject came up of projects that they regret the most, and she mentioned this. And she talks about how there are people who mention that they like it. She mentions like a producer on the show is just like, oh no, I love that movie or something like that. And Whoopi Goldberg was just kind of sitting there going, yeah, I'll see people say that to me sometimes, and I don't get it. She's like, that movie wasn't made for anybody.
The production designer said that he had such an awful time working with her on this film that he can no longer stand to watch her in anything. He has to turn over the channel if she pops up in a film or anything.
It was more than she just simply wanted to be there, which did she actually like really hard to work with on the movie.
At times, some people say that she was difficult, and others say that she came around and that her co-star, the guy that played the puppeteer guy who played Teddy Rex, said she was lovely and that they bonded and she'd host his family and stuff like that. But she said that the crew that began the film, by the time they got to the end, it was an entirely different crew. There'd been so much turnover that it was like 99% of the people were no longer the same when they got to the end of it. It was really a troubled production. And she banned the producers off the set. She agreed to do the film as long as they never appeared. And one day, one of the guys, Stefan, turned up for some reason, and she walked past him and went like, "Motherfucker." And that was their only interaction.
We've talked so many times on this series about, well, it was supposed to be Bruce Willis who was in this role. It was supposed to be this person that was in this role. And like so many times we've had the race swap, the gender swap, just so many things. And then this one, again, we do. I think the idea of casting an African-American, just period, man or woman, in this role is really interesting and really not the right thing to do, because so much of this is about systematic racism against dinosaurs in this world. And to have this African-American actress in this role, like, she should be much more empathetic to their plight, but instead it's just like, oh yeah, fuck dinosaurs. I fucking hate dinosaurs.
It should be an Irish-American cop.
Well, yeah, the what was it? Coltrane, I can't remember the guy's name from the script. And he just reminded me of, like, I don't know, Axe Cop or one of these guys with like the big mustache, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, I can see him being a racist piece of shit against dinosaurs. And then eventually throughout the movie, he starts to change and it becomes a big deal. But at the end, when he calls Teddy his partner, but instead it's just like, wait, what are you doing here, lady? Like, you should be much more sympathetic to this guy who they won't let be a police officer. And when they do, it's a token police officer. I'm like, hello, like
a DEI.
Yeah, it's a DEI hire, basically a dino.
DEI-saurus. Wasn't it meant to be Val Kilmer? That was the name that I saw floated.
I saw Val Kilmer and Kurt Russell at one point.
Kurt Russell I saw. Yeah. It's similar to like Happy Time Murders in that regard, where when you look at what the cast was, what the idea was beforehand, it made way more sense than who ended up being in it. I think Melissa McCarthy's better in that than Whoopi Goldberg was here. But when you look at other names, it's like, yeah, that makes way more sense for this kind of hard edge cop character. Like if Kurt Russell was in this film.
Or if Bob Hoskins hadn't done quite similar in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, he would have probably suited this. But I don't think you could have saved this film by just changing the cast. I think the whole execution is just off, and it's too difficult to pull off this concept, in live action. It had to be animation or just don't do it.
Animation would definitely work. I can for sure see that.
I'm actually surprised that they didn't go ahead and do an animated sequel at some point. I know that it probably made so little money that they're just like, no, this thing is dead. We're never going to do it again. But an animated sequel, or even like a Saturday morning cartoon show, for me, this makes a lot more sense than something like Beetlejuice or Rambo or some of these other ones. RoboCop, Like I said, there's some similarities here too with RoboCop.
Yeah, Dinosaurs and Cops is a great concept for a boys' cartoon, if you went more exaggerated with it. But whatever this is, I guess it would be a good double feature with, like, Howard the Duck, although that is a masterpiece in comparison to this.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with an interview with writer-director Jonathan Betuel right after these brief messages.
Bring home Better Man. Buy on digital now. Experience the recovery and redemption of pop star Robbie Williams in the most original musical ever made. From Michael Gracie, the visionary director of The Greatest Showman, prepare to be entertained with the Oscar-nominated story critics are calling jaw-dropping and wildly inventive. Includes over 45 minutes of show-stopping bonus features. Available at participating retailers. Buy or rent Better Man on Fandango at home now. Rated R from Paramount Pictures.
007, The Sixth Sense, Sweet 16, 9 Songs, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, 12 Angry Men. In the versatile world of cinema, numbers are everywhere, and on the Film by Numbers podcast, we explore just about any aspect from the movie world. From film history to filmmaking to specific movements and directors, and much more besides, each topic on Film by Numbers is dictated by the number of the episode. Brought to you by Outward Film Network and hosted by me, Phil Slatter, and filmmaker David Woods, we will take you on a journey across the vast landscape of film, with interviews with award-winning filmmakers and academics, and featuring discussion, debate and recommendations. Available on all the main podcast providers. If you love film, join us at Film by Numbers.
Academy Award nominee for Best Original Screenplay, September 5th, is now on digital. Based on true events at the 1972 Olympics and the hostage crisis that changed media coverage forever. Starring Peter Sarsgaard, John Magaro, Ben Chaplin, and Leonie Benish. Buy or rent September 5th on Fandango at home. Now, rated PG from Paramount Pictures.
We spoke a while ago about The Last Starfighter, and I'm so curious as far as how Theodore Rex came about.
Well, it was a spec script that I wrote, and it was just sort of a fantasy that I thought, gee, it would be kind of cool if we went against the grain of everything known in the genre at the time, mixing a dinosaur with a detective, and for the science that was required, you were automatically in the future and things like that. So I wrote, this was back in the golden age of specs, where every week there was another script out, and, when writers, justifiably so, were getting ungodly amounts of money before being tortured to death and thrown out the bus. It went out, it got some good reads, and it went to a producer by the name of Rich Abramson. He had raised some money before for other independent movies, and he said he could put it all together. He did. It took a lot longer, as they always do in these cases, than you hope for. Pre-production, we're about to go phase was about a year. And then came the point of the money was there, and then it was looking for a star, which is its own kind of adventure, to say the least. The investor by the name of Stefano Ferrari entered the picture. He was a brave soul. It was kind of trial by fire. The thing was, with the picture, there was nothing off the shelf about it. Mike, you couldn't really just say, okay, exterior windmill, et cetera, and everyone knew what it was. It just sort of, by its very nature, needed intense design. So Bill Stout, a renowned illustrator, came aboard and started doing the production boards and illustrations in the beginning. And that process is a lot of fun, frankly, because no one is attaching a number to the fantasies on the production illustrations yet. You kind of come down to earth when people say, well, yeah, it looks good, but it's going to cost this, and this. And suddenly your moves, everything you do is sort of costed out. By comparison, that's kind of a drag. We were out to actors during that period of time and got some interesting reads and responses. It's kind of like, I guess these days would be going through Tinder, seeing who's going to fit, who likes you, and who you like, and see hopefully that they wind up on the same page. But I met a guy named Larry Finch, who I believe was one of the producers on it, on the end credits, and he said, we were looking at, of all things, to invest in a restaurant together. And he said, what do you do? And I told him, and he said, what kind of script are you doing now? And I told him, he said, hey, I'm good friends with Whoopi Goldberg, and I should show this to her. And, it's one of these things that you hear in town, and you say, right, I'm good friends with so-and-so, So I told the producer that was in London at the time, I said, I got a call saying that Whoopi Goldberg is coming to the office on Monday. I said, do you want to try to get back? He said, no, I'll never make it back. And, don't believe everything you hear. So that Monday, Whoopi walked in. And I said, Whoopi, do you mind if we make a phone call, please? So we called Abrams in London. And I said, hey, Rich, you sitting down? I have someone who wants to talk to you. And Whoopi got on the phone and excoriated him. Said, so you wouldn't get on a plane for me, huh? Well, and that's sort of how it all started.
I read a draft of the script, an early one, and it was from April of 92. You were talking about how long it takes to get a project to get that green light. That sounds like a long time, because it was, 3 years before it actually comes out?
Yeah, the scar tissue has really grown over, Mike, so I don't, exactly. It could be that, but going out and raising money independently, I believe it was about $35 million, really, for a picture that wasn't, how can I say, easy to typecast. Is it an action picture? Is it a drama or a romantic comedy? Well, maybe it's a little of each, and it's about a talking dinosaur. It had an identity problem in that respect for the financial people, but we got over that step by step. And, I think the other thing at the time that might have inadvertently helped was that Barney was such a big success. I don't know if it's financial herd instinct or what, but I remember thinking, purple dinosaur? What? What am I talking about? I got a talking dinosaur that's a policeman, In retrospect, in some ways, technically speaking, the task was enormous to have a physical 9-foot tall animatronic dinosaur worked by puppeteers, all of whom were Henson graduates in one way or another, was still an overwhelming task, especially since we live in the age of CG now. That would have really made life a bit easier. Perhaps a little more expensive, but sometimes you make it up in other ways in terms of you're not going to wait for it. A couple of times the eyes were off, so the eye lines were not right. And you'd go and you'd look at the dinosaur and one eye was this way and one eye was that way. You just at some points felt at the mercy of technology. Way. But yeah, it did take a while. And then New Line, Bob Shea, buccaneer and pioneer that he was, came in and said, well, we'll distribute it. That helped a lot. It was a medium-sized shoot, 60, 70 days. And it's one of those things where it's sort of a growing experience and you kind of know how to do the movie after you've done it. When I remember looking over and there was Whoopi standing there alone, there was the dinosaur next to her. And 20 feet away with cords and cables were 10 guys pulling levers and pulleys. And it just felt like, wow, kind of like the Wright brothers, just, is this going to get off the ground or what? But so it was fun, and the idea was to make a little comic book kind of fantasy about the dinosaur with a green themed bad guy, that kind of thing. Armin Mueller-Stahl was the bad guy. He was a blast. So it was just sort of one of these things where I think, and you've interviewed enough escaped mental patients in this business to know that you wonder at times how anything gets made, anything that gets greenlit. And it's funny, you referenced like the 3 years that it took putting it together. I think we all went home more nights than not thinking, oh my gosh, this is never going to come through, because it becomes a balancing act. The finances, the design, the timing, and all that. Then you get a release date and you're up against a clock that's ticking when you've got post-production that's so involved with something like this, because all the dinosaurs lines had to be dubbed, obviously. And Whoopi had previous commitments that had to be honored as well. So it's just sort of like a circus, to say the least, And that was it. I kind of went from that wanting to do a nice small movie where you could say go, and it just happened. At the end of the day, you had something that was a finished product in a way, And the other thing is, it's seductive because when you write a script, it's also easy on paper. It's very manageable intellectually. But then suddenly you get up at 4 a.m. and you get there and it looks like the end of the world with all the preparation going on, and to stay on target in terms of tone, shut out the rest of the world and focus just on what's in front of you takes a special kind of, focus, to shut out the noise and just look at what's in front of you. I really had to think long and hard about writing another science fiction picture after that. There was just so many ancillary considerations to it. The process was exhausting. The days were long because you could never project when you could finish because it was technologically so difficult. If you did it now, I'm coming back to that point, you would, the rule is that usually we'll fix it in post. These days we'll make it in post, because so much of it comes together now. I co-founded a visual effects company, Lumen Pictures, and we've done a lot of big pictures. And many times after the shooting, it was still a blank slate. It's just actors in front of green screens and things like that.
Once Whoopi comes aboard, do you have to do rewrites? Do you change it to meet her comedic style?
In a way, yes. For her delivery and to write towards her character and the way she would design it. And that's kind of fun. I never usually write for actors because you'll fall in love with an actor that you love for the part, and invariably they are committed, don't respond or whatever, and then suddenly, it's unrequited love. Once an actor comes on, it's very nice to have, which is what we had, Whoopi wanting to be as much a creator of her character as writing. And I always kind of welcomed that, because it's nice to have the actors that breathe life into the characters, because I think writers sometimes sit down and do a screenplay, and as much as they think it's well-rounded, it's the actors that breathe the life into it, and studying techniques of directors and how they compose their characters. It's nice to hear when, for instance, Jason Sudeikis on Ted Lasso was very much a part of making that character who he was and really making it sing on all levels. And Whoopi did that, and Whoopi is kind of overwhelmingly talented in a way. She's very bright, and she doesn't like you just run for the hills, and she's one of these people that knows the jobs of everybody on the set better than they do, probably. And she doesn't spare the horses when it comes to that. So yeah, she was a good collaborator, and I think surprised about the movie in certain ways, because again, it's not something that jumps off the page as, gee, I will do, what was it? The Nun picture she did first, Sister Act, and then this. It's kind of a leap, but she has the range to do that. It's too bad she doesn't do more movies these days that sometimes you can tell pictures that are just flat, whereas others, the actors are really bringing it all together. And someone once said that if you have a gifted actor, they bring you gifts. The trick is to don't pull so hard on the reins. Let them go, to have the wisdom to know when to steer and remind about guardrails, especially with writers. I think writers fall in love with their words, because you've stared at a page for a year and a half and then, no, it's got to be, no, I think there are many ways to say things as long as certain key elements in dialogue that are certain plot points, like that black door has to open. I don't care how you say it. In fact, bring your own style to it, but let's talk about the black door in a way that, in that sense. It's always fun to watch your own stuff come to life. Sometimes you have to stop yourself. Boy, this is the biggest set of electric trains I was ever given. I'm just the guy to fuck it up unless I'm very mindful of the pitfalls. Over time, I would get notes and emails from people, some of them well-known people that were very complimentary, saying, I saw this movie just recently and I didn't see it. What the hell happened to it? Where was it? This was great. And this is what, it's just fortunes of war,
You had been directing since My Science Project, if not before. Had you done directing before that?
No, I hadn't. I just, Science Project came about on the strength of the spec script that went out for auction. I was able to say, and this was right after The Last Starfighter, which was very well received, and was able to get the opportunity through Science Project. When Starfighter came out, it was good reviews. Science Project came out and was set up almost within a week. It was amazing. One of those things that, no, this is not really, yes, it happened. And Kim LeMasters was running Disney at that time, and he gave me the opportunity to do it, and that was an interesting time at Disney. Just before Eisner and Katzenberg came in, it was the keepers of the flame were still there, Waltz guys and things. So picture kind of got lost in the shuffle between the immutable forces of nature.
You have directed things by other writers, if memory serves, at least one episode of Freddy's Dead. Is that right?
I have. During Freddy's, I directed other episodes with other writers, but on the whole, I've been the guy that, in order to set to sea, I've got to build my own ships. And it's an interesting dilemma, because I went through a long period of time where I thought, wow, I'm getting really tired of having to chop down the tree before I can make a toothpick, And then, so, every once in a while, I'd say to the guys I was working with, let's see what's out there. And I would see what was out there. And that was a different layer of Dante's Inferno, because you would get the script and they'd say, well, you're the first one that's seen this. What, in this zip code? And then suddenly you were dependent upon a submission process that you had no control over. You had no idea who else had seen it. But now you're thinking that the barista at Starbucks has passed on it already too, by the time you get to see it. So you're kind of like without a compass in that sense. And not that that matters, but, clearly things work on the food chain concept. And depending upon where you are, the club you want to belong to doesn't want you. The club you don't want to belong to says, hey, what are you doing next week? Hell. I went back to writing scripts, and I wrote another one that right after Science Project, that was bought and greenlit by Columbia again in a record amount of time. And I spent a year in pre-production. It was called Tripwire, and with Dan Melnick producing. And that was a growing experience. It was, Dan was brilliant, an old-time Hollywood producer, and fascinating to be around. But you cut yourself on the edges in a way, and, the process makes you like that to a degree. And about 4 days from starter principal photography, the studio changed hands and David Putnam came in. So, Caligula's out and I don't know, Hitler's in, who knows, and so it was like, man, what's going on here, So that was sort of it. But yeah, on the whole, I've been writing for myself. So I figure there is a natural synergy between writing and directing. It's different types of megalomania, but if you're just a writer, you write the script and then everyone else gets to go out on the class trip and have fun on location. And you stay home, and you wonder, well, what are they doing? Are they going to the circus, or what does it look like? It's a different kind of purgatory. That was, I went back to that process as well, writing, directing it. But the other thing is, I think you have to be a little aggressive more to be a director, aggressive in the sense where you have to endure hearing yourself talk all the time, like having kids. And the kids don't listen to you. And maybe when they do, the ears are cockeyed, the tail, it's just like, yeah. So you keep at it and you stay steady with it. And, then for a long period of time, I think I said before, I just wanted to do something that didn't involve visual effects. And I wrote a small script about a little boy who builds himself a dog without thunderous waves because now it's CG, especially having a CG company that I did for about 20 years. I understand that very well now, and at any rate, we have offers out to actors for that script now. So scripts seem to have a life of their own in a way, and it has nothing to do with the fact that you finish it and you think that's over. Other people read it, have other impressions, and you gradually get it filtered back to you and think either one will think, well, I'm an idiot, but it's cocktail time. Or, man, maybe we got some things right. It's funny, when I talk to other writers now, having been at the game a bit, you can come up as you're writing with more reasons not to write than to write. Because you're so aware of the pitfalls and what can go wrong in terms of perceptions of the script. And you say to your, and I know a bunch of them, they've been successful and they don't want to go through it. It's just like, and I always felt, hey, I don't care. I'll take notes from the cleaning lady, and if those notes are articulate and something I missed, absolutely. But other people are kind of like, this is a script, the imperial script. I've given my lifeblood to this. It's an interesting process. And I always loved it because it's sort of an art form that nobody sees except on the screen. And yet, when you think about it, it's the emotional core of the entire production. That's where everything comes from. The performances, the camera moves, the music, all melds together to heighten the emotional exposure to an audience. And either it talks to them or it doesn't. When you think that the screenplay is that pebble that rolls down the snowbank and becomes something big, then again, you're either paralyzed or you think, well, what the hell? Let's go. Let's try, and I'm kind of the type of writer, the writer that does like draft after draft after draft. The first draft is just the block of marble from which you fashion the script. And I've always been amazed at writers that will gestate, and then they will sit down and write it, and that's it. I've heard that Robert Towne was like that, and it's just fascinating. Read an article, an interview with Neil Simon. He said, dating himself, he said, I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. So I think in the end, Teddy Rex probably had 20 or 30 rewrites, and some were detours, others were, I remember taking a couple of weeks off, and a producer on the show who shall go nameless at this point handed me a draft when I got back. He said, my wife took a pass at the script and she worked out all the problems. I remember a person whose voice sounded a lot like mine saying, yes, I mind. But when you're in the middle of a picture, as you've heard it thousands of times, you kind of roll with it, listen to it, and then figure out workarounds no matter what happens. Yeah, because it just hits you from all sides. And then the other thing is that in pre-production, you make decisions that 6 months later, when you're exhausted and you've been up 18 hours, you come face to face with, and you think to yourself, oh my God, how could I have been so, and here it is, the donkey has 6 legs when it should, what am I doing? It's an amazing process. And God, I really admire Coppola for going back at that age and really saying, this is how I see it and this is what I want. And I've got the money to make it happen. These guys are nice, pudgy guys who, in all of our classes used to run the audio visual department, but they're tough. They're tough. They know what they want. They know how to get it. And they're charming. I remember reading once, I think it was Coppola who said, it's a team sport, but the day the camera shows up, it becomes a dictatorship. Because I'm the first one that gets executed.
You were talking about taking notes from people, even the cleaning lady, like you said. Once the cameras are rolling, are you allowing for improv? Are you precious about your screenplay? Are you open to suggestions then? Or is it pretty much, hey, this is what we agreed to, this is what we're going with?
It really depends upon the context. I'm not precious about words. I'm very fluid in that respect. And sometimes getting what's the point of the scene, where you have to wind up, on your left foot or your right foot. And sometimes, as I said, actors give you gifts and they will take you around a circuitous route that is a lot of fun, and that's what I always used to look for in auditions and things like that, who's a collaborator and who is, and, the other thing is that before you begin shooting, you call other directors that have worked with the actors before, and through back channels you find out, did you have to protect them? Do they wilt after the third take, or do they get better on the fourth take? And then in scenes where you've got actors that are good for 1 and 2 and fried by 4 and 5, and you got the other actor that goes the opposite way, so you blend and balance that. So, it's so many things that go into those considerations. I think that continues to be interesting.
I think it was just so gutsy that you write a screenplay about a cop and a dinosaur without probably knowing how you're going to do the dinosaur effects at that time. That must have just been like such a leap of faith.
Yeah, I think that what kind of carried me through that in a way was naivete. Whereas today you've got so many tools in the toolbox. There are ways to do it, ways around it. But, when I would look at Sesame Street and the Jim Henson guys and what they could do, the overabiding objective was to make it look as real as possible, given the fact that it's a talking dinosaur, but it doesn't mean it can't look real in that context. And I wanted to design the world of a talking dinosaur as much into a cartoon comic book that supported the look of the dinosaur. So it was all sort of blended together to work like that. But it was, I would say, kind of an interesting, flashy idea. It's not the one off the shelf, like a Western, like I said before, or something that could be categorized as an action picture or something, but it was probably quite a balancing act. And in some ways, I think it worked. In other ways, I would. Yeah, you can't look at anything like that without saying, I wish I'd had more time. I wish gone a different direction. Such is the game as it is, really. At the end, I think it's heart over hardware, Mike. I think that's what conveys. That really talks to an audience. I can say with my Starfighter experiences, those scenes that have continued to talk to audiences are the scenes of the family. A small town boy with a dream to leave a dusty trailer park, and somehow or other, this silly talent that he has that means nothing here means a lot on faraway worlds. And coupled with the fact that I believe it was the first use of CG in pictures that looked really rough, really bad. Producers were oversold on what the CG could do by digital productions, and those guys who were sort of lords of the digital world at that time with the Cray computers, and so compared to 10 years ago, sure, but the problem became it doesn't look right. There's a release date coming, and everyone surrounding us, because I was with Nick, the director, throughout the whole process, and they were all saying, gee, doesn't it look great? And then you're saying to yourself, really? Compared to what? And so, but I guess my point is that it's the heart that comes through. If the heart is crafted, it can work, on most pictures. And when you think of pictures, moments, and then there are moments like that, enduring, relatable, and warm.
You're talking about the 10 people with the servos and all those things. Plus, you've got, I imagine, a person in the suit as well. So trying to shoot around that and make sure that you are able to capture your vision while maintaining that illusion must have been very difficult as well.
It was balancing 12 disparate disciplines in your head each time that creature came on, because it was, these guys really knew what they were doing because they were doing with it Henson all the time. They spoke a different language to one another, and you're always looking at the dinosaur moving its mouth, wondering, okay, now is that going to work with so many things, and so easy on things like that to get pulled away from performance and get buried in the technical aspects of it. And that's what I was always fighting, because someone always tap you on the shoulder and say, wait, we have a broken servo. Okay, how long is it going to take? It's going to take an hour because we got to take it out of the suit and things like that. The line producer was a funny guy. He would never say, we got to move on. Whenever I turned around and we were dragging a bit that day, he would take his wad of dollar bills and pat his forehead. They say, hey man, but this is costing a lot of money. You've got to be sure of this,
Did the movie change that much during the editing, or was it pretty well what you shot?
It was pretty much what was shot, because Whoopi's performance, actually, she was like amazing, because you would get all kinds of tone, textures, and reads from her. You'd want to keep going, but the dinosaur wasn't. Dinosaur was going to deliver a certain way, certain nuance of movements, and I remember learning that the human face has, I think, 40 points of emotive muscles on it. Like our eyebrows mean one thing, looking to the left. So you learn that language pretty quick. So you're giving direction to the dinosaur. Okay, make his eyes go to his right. Now roll them around, that kind of, or ripple his lips, because each of them conveys something, and that was learning a lot.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that as far as directing a human performer versus directing a dinosaur, and you're really directing all the people around him.
Yeah, I mean, think about just crinkling your nose, what that means. Smelling, snapping with your teeth. All these things that we take for granted are visual cues that we respond to. The more I got into that, I thought, oh my God. And thank God Whoopi knew her stuff cold, because I was directing the dinosaur a lot too. And that was a chore unto itself, truly.
I hate to ask this, but I have to. What happened with Whoopi during the production? Because I've read so many things and I don't know what is true and what's not.
Whoopi agreed to do the picture. And she then got 2 other pictures shortly thereafter. I'm told that the producers know this better than I do, that the deal she made on this picture was a vast amount of money for a small amount of time, which raised her price considerably for the next 2 pictures that they signed up for, like within the next couple of months. So the pre-production period was long because the dinosaur had to be built. So in the meantime, they came to Stefano Ferrari of the Carr family and said, do you mind if Whoopi did a picture before we start up? And he said, no, not a problem. And because, in a picture, her involvement would be 2 months, maybe, 60 days or whatever. And we were putting the dinosaur together, getting everything organized. Then they came again and said, she's got another picture. Okay. And Stefano very graciously said, sure. Then we were getting ready to start, and they came to us again and said, she's got one more picture. And Stefano said, no, now we have to assert our line in her schedule because it's costing money, hold money. If you have production money set aside, they don't stop charging you if you don't. So it gets really expensive. And there was a meeting that came about, and I don't know, Hollywood Attitude was sort of put forward from her manager at the time, Keith Addis, who basically said, well, we think that we're going to do this movie, and if you don't like this, basically sue us. Not in so many words, but Stefano, who truly a gentleman that had never been through anything like this, whereas Abramson and myself, if the tarantula bit us, the tarantula dies. He said to Keith, that's not right. We gave you a fortune for this. You just please honor. And they said, no. I don't think they knew that he was a guy of his word and he would take it to the end. And he did, and that's how nothing from our side was released about what was going on, but how everyone talks, everyone knows. And your gardener comes in with credits. Hey, I work on Warren Beatty's house or something, okay, fine. That was a rough ride through that. It doesn't help to get into a lawsuit with your star.
Did that sour her relationship with you?
No, we had the frank and working meeting after all the smoke cleared, but it took a while. It took a while to loosen up a little. It was a lesson on so many levels, Mike. I hope that answers your question about that.
Do you think that the negative press that had been focused on Theodore Rex, is that what helped sink the picture, or were people just not ready for a cop dinosaur partner movie?
I don't think the press helped because, I think it became a curiosity for the wrong reasons in a way. This was a troubled set and all that. I think that was part of it. I don't know about audiences being ready for things. I think if something is done with humor, style, and so many of the sort of lightning in a bottle aspects of putting a picture together and making it work, they're always receptive. They're always willing to go out when the lights go off and believe, So I don't, it's hard to figure. And then, there's so many moving parts, distribution, timing, and all these things. It's just like in Starfighter. Starfighter became the first movie that used CG. So in the interviews, that was a guiding light of a lot of questions. And that it just changes the complexion of the conversations in a way.
You mentioned the whole comic bookness of the movie, and I did find it interesting that there are so many bright colors throughout the entire palette of that film, but then Whoopi is all in black throughout, I think, almost all of it. Was that kind of a purpose to, here's the human and they're boring, and here's the dinosaurs and they live in this colorful world?
Whoopi's idea was, if this is a cop, the concept was that law enforcement at that time is expedited. So you're caught in a crime, a cop with the assistance of an AI unit implanted in them is judge, jury, and executioner at the same time. And she thought, well, it would be appropriate for a black uniform. And I thought, yeah, that would be a logical thing. And I did want to keep the palette to primary colors otherwise, so it wasn't so, dystopian future bleak that we see all the time. Because how are you going to do that with the talking dinosaur anyway? That has a tweed jacket on. I can't do it.
You mentioned Armin Mueller-Stahl a little bit earlier. How was he to work with?
He was very nice, very courtly, very total professional. And in the sense that I could do this way. Is it what? Wait a second. It's just so versatile, and then really puts you back on your game to think about it, because he had a great presence in a way, and the stories he would tell. It's one of these people, like with Robert Presto and Starfighter, he'd start talking and suddenly a half hour would go by when he'd start telling you stories about, inadvertently, not boastfully, about the movies he'd been on and the old Hollywood and that. It was just fascinating.
I thought the casting of Stahl was very smart because he gives off that kind of friendly grandpa energy. So to have him play the villain, I thought was very smart.
The point was exactly that, to have a very avuncular, warm presence that wants to own the world, Because they are, the crazy ones are really like that, the crazy, stupid ones come off like that if, first off in a script, but gradually you get into the, whoa, grandpop's out of his tree. It was fun. All in all, it was fun. There were points at which felt like it took too long, and probably like every movie has points at which you think, oh my God, why is this taking so long? And I think patience is a great virtue in this business. Nothing happens when you think it's going to happen. And if someone says they're going to get right back to you, that's a Hollywood get right back to you. That means 3 weeks. So you adjust accordingly.
So what do you do immediately after Theodore Rex?
Drink heavily. You just take a deep breath, and you go over it all the time. What else? What's been missed? What's here? And that kind of thing. Because by then the boat has sailed. As a movie gets close to completion, as you're on sets and locations, before you move to another set, have I gotten everything I need here before we move on? Because coming back is so ghastly expensive. That's why I had an editor that I always like to work with editors that would stay up to camera. So they'd put rough assemblies together as you were shooting each scene. So they would know what fit, what else, maybe get something else before you move on, that kind of thing. I think you go through a period where did I get everything? It's where you start second guessing yourself because you've been doing that for so long. And the whole experience of shooting is not normal. You get up and everyone's got walkie-talkies and it's like, you don't have one. What? Was I in the wrong line? And everyone, so that takes getting used to. And afterwards takes getting used to not having that. It's nice, but I think everyone just kind of should be forced to, with DGA rules, to go watch 3 days of nothing but waves rolling into the beach.
How soon after Theodore Rex do you co-found the special effects company?
That was about 2 years later. I had written this script about a little boy who builds himself a dog, and it was very manageable. And I met my partner at the time who had nice samples and not connections at studios. So I had sort of been through that. So we decided to see what we could do. That took a lot longer because that's a different tribe, different club. In order to get into that, you have to have had already samples. He didn't have those from working movies. Mine consisted of one CG movie, so it took a lot longer for it to get off the ground than we anticipated. And then you put your efforts into getting it started. I think it took like almost 5 years before we saw any profits from it. Now, once again, it's like, I think there should be a writer, effects producer, director. All three disciplines are so interwoven now. I think that the directors that work with effects houses, usually they stay with one effects house from picture to picture, and it serves them well, because so many effects houses are, well, that's an interview in itself.
What are you working on these days?
Working on the script about the little boy that builds himself a dog. We are out to actors now. And that's really what I'd like to do. And I'm writing the sequel to The Last Starfighter. It's been a long road on Starfighter in the sense that for a long time, I was considered the stumbling block to having a sequel made. But I didn't think I didn't have the rights. I discovered through a series of studio skullduggery moments that when Laura Mara was bought by Warner Brothers, if you know these players, someone neglected to keep abreast of the fact that they had 10 years to exploit the rights to the picture, or they reverted to me. However, that is like having a great white shark on the hook and being in a rowboat. I was told that no one would work with me, even if I did have the rights to the movie, because the studios would throw a shadow over it. And that was the case for a while until I started hiring attorneys. No law firm in LA would go against a studio. I hired a firm in New York that secured the rights, and I got the copyright. And it was a quiet victory, and made much more satisfying by the fact that when you recapture a copyright, they let all the entities know that it is now yours. So one went to Warner's that has the distribution rights for the foreign. I have it on everything else, and lets everyone know that there's a new sheriff in town. But it's not like that, really. It's just that I had to defend the rights at every turn of the screw. And it was expensive and harrowing, and I didn't have any guarantee that I would be able to do something with it once I won, if I did. But I'm told that Cameron got back the rights to Terminator in some way. Are you aware of that? Or
No, I didn't know he ever lost them.
I didn't either. But the fact that he got them back when that's such a recognizable franchise, it's pretty amazing, So that, I think that helped somewhat. So, but it was a bumpy road, that kind of thing. I look forward to taking Starfighter to the next generation, in a way. And it's going to be standalone film where you don't have to know about what came before, but hat tips to past, not get buried in it. I'm not here to defend that in any way, just to move on. There's so many things, but it was interesting. I'm in the middle of the script now, servicing characters that everyone knows, and as well as adding new ones. So it's an interesting balancing act, story-wise. It's been great. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward this time to bringing the aliens to Earth. I don't want to go big with hardware and everything, because we've seen it. Marvel does it beautifully, time after time. But the premise is simple. What if the dad you had that you thought was a janitor in a trailer park fixing cesspools was in reality Luke Skywalker? And it's the recognition between a father and son that a student is about to become a master. So that's what I'm up to these days.
I love The Last Starfighter, obviously, and I will probably be first in line to buy a ticket. Look forward to that.
You won't have to buy a ticket, man. We'll go out and get drunk beforehand. Or man, I promise that.
Does this mean I have to fly to LA?
Oh, come on, man. You're probably here every other weekend, especially when it gets cold.
He's a kung fu renegade cop.
I don't want to hear it, Kung Fury. I've just been at City Hall. You just destroyed an entire city block, for Christ's sake.
I quit. Now he must defeat the most evil kung fu master in the world, Adolf Hitler, a.k.a. Kung Fuer.
Hitler. He's the worst criminal of all time. I need to kill him. I can hack you back in time to Nazi Germany, just like a time machine.
Kung Fury.
That's right. We are back and we're talking about Theodore Rex. And the other thing, I mentioned how this reminded me a little bit of iRobot. You guys mentioned Super Mario Brothers. The other thing that it kept reminding me of, and I had to go back and rewatch it last night, was Kung Fury because of Triceracop, who's the best damn partner Kung Fury could ever really want. But it takes a while for him to realize that, because in that, Kung Fury loses his partner after he's sliced in two by a ninja master and doesn't want to have another partner when he gets partnered up with Triceracop. He gets very angry, goes out, tries to do stuff on his own, and then Triceracop is right there after he travels through time to Nazi Germany to have a huge kung fu fight with Adolf Hitler. What a movie. Half an hour does so much more and really makes me feel for Triceracop.
The scene in that short film, because I watched it again because you mentioned it, when Hitler guns down the police station through the phone.
Oh, I love it.
He shoots the phone and the bullets come out the other end. It's so wildly creative and wacky and insane, but that is a mini masterpiece. It's incredible.
Oh, it's so good. And I just love how awkward Kung Fury is, that he's always trying to come up with one-liners and they all just suck. Like, knock, knock, who's there? Knuckles. It plays into all those 80s tropes and stuff that just really work well, especially, fucking David Hasselhoff at the end. I love you, Hoff 9000.
It's so well done. It's one of those things where you can tell they're not half-assing it, because even like the fight scenes are just incredible. Like the athleticism of the main fella. The only thing about that is when I was watching it again, if that came out today, I would think, oh, it's AI. It's like, it's created that way. So the fact that they did it when they did it, it stands to them. I'd watch a feature film of that.
I was having a good time last night. Like, I don't tend to use AI image generators that much, but I went out to ChatGTP and I was just like, okay, give me an image of a Tyrannosaurus Rex who is a cop. And it gave me a beautiful image. I'm like, all right, now the cop has a partner. Now the cop's lost a partner. Now the cop is, now it's a going out for a kill crazy rampage, and just like did all these basically like storyboards. And I was like, this is such a better movie.
I hope one of those images had the partner riding the dinosaur, because why would you not do that?
You would think at some point Whoopi Goldberg would have been on Teddy's shoulders,
Get on his back and ride him into battle and
she realized she could walk faster.
She'd be using spurs on him. Come on, hurry up.
Takes out a saddle.
He's no raptor, that's for sure.
I guess that would kind of defeat the purpose of them being equal partners, and she's whipping him and riding him. No back talk, Teddy. Yeah.
There's a couple moments in the movies where the dinosaur's eye, his left eye, doesn't open all the way, and he looks so stupid.
There's a few moments where his mouth doesn't move. He's talking and his mouth's not moving. They're shooting over the shoulder shots, and I guess they thought we don't need to puppeteer him. But he's talking back to her. He's so verbal, and he's not moving his mouth. And I was like, oh, that's the first mistake I've seen so far.
And they dress him like they're sending him to go undercover at a school. His costume is literally the same thing as the Steve Buscemi, how are you doing, my fellow students meme.
I was part of a special task force of very young-looking cops who infiltrated high schools. How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Sorry, keep kicking this movie while it's down. I really wanted to like this movie. I really wanted to.
Me too. There's another thing as well that I hoped for with the film, is that Whoopi did end up, like myself and Whoopi were both fellow Razzie nominees. And I thought it would have been lovely if she did actually win the Razzie, because she would have been the first person in history to be a REGOT winner.
Oh, yeah. What were you up for a Razzie for?
I was one of 9 writers on a parkour Oliver Twist film, the last film of Michael Caine's career, unfortunately. I think he retired because of that film called Twist. Yeah, I'm very proud of that fact, but none of the other writers who were involved, and none of us worked with each other. We were all like replacing one another. My draft was 11 years before the film got made, but I was rooting for us to win. I just wanted that Razzie. It would have been my Demi Moore moment, my first time winning something for writing. I'd fucking love it. I'd dine out on that. It would be in my bio and everything. But no, we lost to some Princess Diana movie.
Oh, I know which one you mean.
Yeah.
The owl who played her. Was it
Kristen Stewart?
Oh, yeah.
No,
I think it might have been. I think it might have been Naomi Watts.
Naomi Watts. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, foiled again. Fucking royal family.
Yeah, I was really hoping for like some more actual tropes in this movie, like when they have, and I don't understand, like Teddy, you're almost crashing this fucking airplane, but when they're suddenly flying in an airplane or a gyrocopter, and it's Bud Cort flying in, I was like, oh, is he going to now suddenly become a good guy? Because he definitely does not like Stephen McHatty's character. But no, if anything, I think he dies in the crash.
The strange thing about this film, though, is that aside from Whoopi's character, Teddy, Molly, and the boy, every other character is a bad guy. It's a huge conspiracy with all these bad guys.
Yeah, way too many. I mean, Richard Roundtree is pretty decent, but even then he's like, well, I don't know if we're going to let this dinosaur be a cop. And then it takes the other bad guy, what's his name, Simmons, to convince him.
Not Tim Robbins.
Right. Oh, God.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, my.
The whole time, dude, seriously, I was like, it's Tim Robbins, right?
Yeah. Again, casting like Shaft to be a borderline racist mayor, or is he mayor or commissioner? It feels like you're crossing the streams a little here.
Yeah, at first I thought Jack Riley was going to be the police captain, the way he shows up in that like hologram, but no, I guess he's just like the tech guy. Maybe, I don't know. I guess that's why he's friends with Whoopi, since she's part robot. God, Jesus.
And they had Roundtree right there. Why isn't he playing the main cop? You could have had Shaft partnered with a dinosaur.
Oh, that would have been fun. That would have been really fun. Oh, you just ruined the film for me.
Yeah, because before, like I said, you were in love with it.
Going out on a high.
We did an episode on Super Mario Brothers, and just all of the writers. I mean, I think there were, 8 or more writers, and then like some writers came back. It's just amazing to me that this was one writer-director. I mean, I can't even imagine how Betuel just suffered seeing what he created turning into this throughout a 3-year period of time.
I hope he got paid well for it.
I hope so too.
It went to Whoopi's race.
Which is weird because she made $5 million for this?
Yeah,
7?
Something like that.
$7 million. Okay. And this is, when did Jim Carrey start making 20 mil of film? Was that post Ace Ventura?
It went up to 7 on Dumb and Dumber. And then I think he got around 20 for Cable Guy, which is 95, I think 95, 96.
Looks like I was wrong about the release date. Looks like this came out July 2nd, 1996. So
Ooh, summer movie.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, dumped right to video, though. So, yeah, summer video release. If I can believe Wikipedia. I don't know if I can or not.
Wokepedia, get rid of it.
Wokepedia,
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Those jokes are no longer funny anymore. We're living in a dystopia.
I want to know, too, what did that chimpanzee do to get it thrown into jail?
I've seen the film twice, Mike, and I can't remember a chimpanzee.
I know, same here. I'm like, oh, I hope you got my back on this one. I don't remember the chimpanzee.
They throw the little kid into jail, and there's a chimp in there, and then when they rescue him, he's carrying the chimp, and he goes, "Can I keep him?"
Yeah, but wasn't he really rude to the chimp when he first went into the jail cell? Wasn't he like, what are you looking at, or something like this? And I thought, what is wrong with everybody?
Because that was another ADR thing where they're walking away and she doesn't really even answer him. She's just kind of like, no. Or like, she just kind of gives a non-answer as she's walking away, where it's like clearly neither was saying anything in that shot.
I like at the very, very end, the last shot after he gets the commendation, or he gets promoted, I think, to being an actual legitimate detective, going from a mascot or a PR hire to a detective. Everybody just keeps applauding the entire time, the whole time as they're talking and walking away, just clapping and clapping and clapping. And it's like, why are they clapping? The speech is over.
The bizarre wipe that they're doing as Teddy's walking and the screen starts getting black. Because like you said, Brad, he barely moves. And the screen just is like following him and that real rough matte line around him as he moves. And then the last title card that says, "See ya." And I'm like, oh my God, I want to die. I want to die.
Man, that shot of the cropped in black on there with like the line around him, where the pixelation around him too. That looked like it would be like the final shot on like an HBO first look about the movie, where then it cuts to the credits of the featurette.
But you know what? I can forgive it because there was intention behind it, whereas everything else just felt like it was, this'll do, keep going.
I really wanted to end on a higher note than this, but at least now, Kevin, you've got a new favorite film that you can enjoy for the rest of your life. We're going to take another break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
Una sola palabra que resume toda la dignidad y la fuerza y el calibre excelso de este hombre, cuya desaparición prematura aún para su gloria aquí nos reúne. Proletario, siempre pudo vérsele en la primera línea de combate contra todas las fuerzas opresoras. Por eso no podía hacérsele mejor homenaje que el acordado por sus compañeros del consolidado en Asamblea Relámpago, que fuera enterrado con su carnet laboral, símbolo de su convicción obrera.
Nada, que acá la señora está gestionando su pensión. Y para eso necesita traer el carnet laboral de su difunto esposo.
Será necesario que ustedes procedan a la exhumación del cadáver.
¿Qué dijo?
La muerte de un burócrata.
Tráigame una orden judicial o de la Dirección de Sanidad o venga dentro de 2 años.
Ah, chico, para esto tienes que volver mañana. Acaban de marcharse ahora mismo.
Ciclo 2014 de Nuestro Cine. Sábado a las 23:30.
Compañero.
That's right, we'll be back next week with a look at the Cuban film Death of a Bureaucrat. A little bit different than this one. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts Brad and Kevin. So Brad, what's the latest with you, sir?
My latest book, Bat Pussy, is available over on Amazon. The last time I did your show, I think I was in the middle of writing it, and we were talking about that movie for a little bit. So,
what's it about?
It's based on this movie from 1970 that is notoriously called the worst porno ever made, but it is also arguably the first porn parody ever made as well. And there's no credits to the movie, so no one knows who made it or who these actors are in it. So I wrote this book that's a fictitious making of the movie, like all the events that lead up to the making of it. It's in 1970. It's about this former B director who comes back from shooting some footage in Vietnam, gets involved in this crooked theater company. Things happen and he makes Bat Pussy along with a method actress hooker.
That sounds genuinely great. That's a great idea.
It was, thank you. It was a lot of fun to write, and like the reviews of it have been really good. So I'm super excited about it, and it's available now over on Amazon.
Instant purchase.
Sounds like a perfect gift for you and all of your loved ones.
Exactly. My mom did order a copy.
And Kevin, for those foolish souls who haven't been with us every week during this Whoopwary journey, what is the latest with you?
I'm over on the Best Bits. When this comes out, we'll actually be releasing our final episode. Been podcasting for 4 years, so Best Ending is our last episode. Doesn't mean we're going to stop podcasting. Me and my podcasting partner will, but we're coming to a close on that project, which was jumping about, watching and picking our favorite film scenes based on randomly selected themes. And yeah, so if you want to jump over, you'll get the last episode for myself and Will on the Best Bits. And I'm also writing nothing as exciting as Bat Pussy, but maybe I can adapt it.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They're all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth send the world into a new ice age where we're going to bring back all of the animals 2 by 2 because that really doesn't work. But anyway, we'll try it anyway. So enjoy that.
I'm so proud of you.